And our opening words by Rebecca Edmondson Lang. Come in. Come into this place which we make holy by our presence. Come in with all your vulnerabilities and strengths, fears and anxieties, loves and hopes. For here you need not hide, nor pretend, nor be anything other than who you are and are called to be. Come into this place where the ordinary is sanctified, the human is celebrated, the compassionate is expected. Come into this place, together we make it a holy place. And this morning, please feel free to join me in the closing lines of the spoken prayer, which you may know as the Serenity Prayer. Spirit of life, surround us with your gentleness. Draw out in us our own tenderness, which sometimes gets lost amidst our rough edges, our self-critique, our judgments, disappointments, and frustrations. We ask for patience, for forgiveness, for steadfast love which embraces all of who we are and all of who we can be. May we be patient. May we forgive. May we love unconditionally. We ask for the strength required to distinguish the voice of conscience from the voice of ego. We ask for the wisdom to discern what is the common good. We ask for the confidence required to stand up for what is right and just. And we thank you for the sweet joys of friendship and laughter, the unexpected gifts of sunsets and moonrises and birds taking flight, the solace of quiet harbors and long walks, all of which help us to refill our cup. We are grateful for the touchstones which recall us to center, including this prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen. Our service this morning is on the topic of manners. And I had a great time researching this week. Here's my favorite quote from Oscar Wilde, who said, "The world was my oyster, but I used the wrong fork." And our reading this morning is a poem, there were a lot of poems on manners, by the way, that were great. But I chose this one called "Pass the Peas, Please" by Dina Anastasio. I wanted to shorten it, but I fell in love with each verse, so I couldn't. Here's the whole thing. If you run over a sandcastle created by your brother, kneel down and say, "I'm sorry." Then just help him build another. When you see someone who's different, don't laugh. It isn't fair. He might think you are different, but he doesn't point and stare. If you're angry at a friend, don't punch or kick or shout. Go for a walk and count to 10, then try to talk it out. No one likes to lose a game, but if you must, you must. So if you lose, shake hands and say, "We'll play again, I trust." It's hard to keep a secret, but secret telling's wrong. Remember, friends who blab too much aren't friends for very long. If your father's talking on the phone when he should be playing ball, don't kick or sulk or whine, "Let's go." That will not work at all. Don't interrupt your uncle when he's talking about his car, even though it's boring. Well, you know how uncles are. When you're eating mashed potatoes and there's something you must say, please wait until you've swallowed. The thought won't go away. If your brother has a cupcake that he's saving for tomorrow, don't take a bite, not even one, or he'll be filled with sorrow. If your neighbor won't stop talking and you feel a yawn, come on, put your mouth behind your fingers until your yawn is gone. Don't eat spaghetti with your knife, your fingers, or a spoon. Use your fork. Although it's hard, you'll catch on pretty soon. When you're outside playing soccer and kick someone in the knee, don't tell him that he's in your way. Say, sorry, pardon me. Don't play with Grandma's dishes if your mother has forbid it. But if you do, and if they break, don't say your sister did it. We all leave toys and clothes around. It's okay just once or twice. But if a king and queen should come to call, they might not think it's nice. When someone's in the bathroom and won't get out, don't worry. Just knock and say, I'm waiting, I must come in, please hurry. Don't play the drums or sing a song when somebody is sick. Just tiptoe by and give a wave and say, please get well quick. When your sister's busy practicing and you really want to hide, don't cover your ears or make a face, just smile and go outside. Towels that are soggy will not dry someone's back, so toss them in the laundry or hang them on the rack. When your sister gets a bicycle and you just get a kite, don't say, you like her better. Say, thank you, it's just right. If a friend is having trouble and he falls and gives a yelp, don't laugh or point or call him names. Say, are you hurt? And may I help? If there's something very special that you'd really like to borrow, ask before you take it and bring it back tomorrow. If your great aunt gives you candy and your friends would like a lot, it's nice to share a little, even though you'd rather not. When you're going to a movie and the line is 2 blocks long, don't butt in front, go to the end, then calmly hum a song. When you're sitting at the table and want some extra peas, don't shout out, give me more of those. Say, could you pass the peas, please? I think that my job here is done. The divine secrets of the Yaya sisterhood. One of the main characters, Sida Lee, is so overwhelmed by thinking about her upcoming wedding that she cancels it. She writes to her mother, my problem is I just don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how to love. Her spunky mother, Vivi, writes back, do you think any of us know how to love? Do you think anybody would ever do anything if they waited until they knew how to love? Do you think that babies would ever get made, or meals cooked, or crops planted, or books written? Do you think people would even get out of bed in the morning if they waited until they knew how to love? You have had too much therapy. Or not enough. God knows how to love, kiddo. The rest of us are only good actors. Forget love. Try good manners. Forget love. Try good manners. I wondered whether this was good advice or not. So to investigate, I have plunged into the world of etiquette and manners this week. And what better place to start than with the godmother of good manners, Emily Post. Emily Post was born in 1872 as Emily Price. The daughter of a wealthy architect, she was educated at home and then attended Miss Graham's finishing school in New York City. She met Edwin Post, a prominent banker, at a ball at a Fifth Avenue mansion. And in 1892, they were married, took a honeymoon tour of Europe, and settled into their home in Washington Square. Emily had always loved to write, and her early works included humorous travel books. But in 1922, her real success came when she published her first book on etiquette. Etiquette became a bestseller and was reprinted many times. Post became the go-to woman for questions about manners. She spoke on radio programs and had her own column in over 200 newspapers. Reading Post's etiquette rules today, some of them are quite quaint and old-fashioned. Here's one. When Mrs. Oldname calls on Mrs. Stranger for the first time, the latter may do nothing but call in return. It would be the height of presumption to invite one of conspicuous prominence until she had first been invited by her. Nor may the strangers ask the Oldnames to dine after merely being invited to tea. But when Mrs. Oldname asks Mrs. Stranger to lunch, the latter might then invite the former to dinner, after which, if they accept, the strangers can continue to invite them on occasion, whether they are invited in turn or not. These strict social rules hardly seem relevant today. But on the other hand, some of her advice is still spot on. She writes, "Life, whether social or business, is a bank in which you deposit certain funds of character, intellect, and heart, or other funds of egotism, hard-heartedness, and unconcern, or deposit nothing, and the bank honors your deposit, and no more. In other words, you can draw nothing out but what you have put in." 5 generations later, Emily's family is still in the etiquette business. I just read a book by her great-granddaughter-in-law, Peggy Post, called Everyday Etiquette: How to Handle the Top Manners Dilemmas. It takes Emily's rules of thumb and updates them for the 21st century. One section of the book lists the golden rules of email etiquette, including, if you can't post it on a bulletin board for everyone to read, don't send it. Avoid using all capitals in your emails. They're the equivalent of yelling. And forgo the chain letters. As for Facebook, she advises us to avoid posting too much information. This could mean too many banal updates such as what you ate for breakfast, or could mean updates that are too personal in nature, such as relationship or medical details. She also says to avoid negative posts. One of my favorite sections to read was a section on guidelines for dealing with other people's rude behavior. What if we are being polite, but others aren't? Peggy Post offers these pieces of advice. Number 1, don't take it personally. Perhaps the offender is having a bad day. Take the focus off your hurt feelings by imagining what he might be going through. The sting of a recent confrontation, financial troubles, an ill spouse. 2, size up your annoyances. Will it accomplish anything to make a stink about the person who's using a credit card at the cash-only register? Or will it just be a waste of your emotional energy? Number 3, set a good example. Rudeness begets rudeness. If you speak sharply to a bank teller, don't be surprised if you get the same treatment in return. Number 4, count to 10. When someone's behavior makes you angry, take a few deep breaths and ask yourself, is it really worth blowing my stack over this? Number 5, laugh it off. Countering the comment, "You look awful," with a sarcastic retort like, "How kind of you to say so," is preferable to, "Well, you don't look so hot yourself." If you can't come up with a friendly joke, she says, just chuckle and change the subject. And the posts aren't the only ones offering updated advice on etiquette. On a recent episode of the radio show Dinner Party Download, I caught the etiquette portion of the dinner, which they include every week. Listeners submit questions, and the guest of honor responds. On this day, the guest of honor was Hugh Bonneville, who plays Lord Grantham on Downton Abbey. A perfect person to respond to questions of etiquette, I thought. Someone asked, if you are in a museum or gallery and see someone touching a painting, what do you do? Hugh also suggested trying humor first. Gently tap the person on the shoulder, he advised, and say, excuse me, do you know how long it took me to paint that? Of course, he added, if they are defacing art, hit the panic button. While the problems and situations we face today may be quite different from those of Emily or Lord Grantham's day, Post's approach to manners is still relevant. It is about making others feel at ease in your company. But don't mistake manners for meekness. Emily doesn't advocate letting other people walk all over you just to be polite. In 1905, she divorced her husband because of his infamous affairs with a series of chorus girls. Emily wasn't naive. She just appreciated the civility and stability that comes with knowing how to navigate potentially uncomfortable situations and how to stick to the moral high ground. One thing about manners that can be puzzling, though, is that good manners in one context do not automatically translate to another. Perhaps in Emily's day, pre-globalization, this mattered less. But these days it's more of a conundrum. I remember something funny that happened just before I set out for Taiwan to study Buddhism. My mother ran into our former minister, Doris Hunter, who is a scholar of world religions and a great world traveler. My mother told her that I was headed to a monastery in Taiwan, and Doris said, "Great, have her call me. I'll tell her how to behave." I couldn't believe it when my mother gave me the message. "I already know how to behave," I insisted. I tried to think back on any misbehaving I might have done during Doris's time at the church. I couldn't think of anything. I didn't call her. But upon arrival in Taiwan, I quickly realized that my Western manners were not going to get me very far. The monastery was a minefield of faux pas. I had to learn not to walk through the center door to a temple, to take my shoes off, but to remember to wear socks because feet are considered dirty. I had to learn not to point my feet at the Buddha and to exit the temple backwards so that I would not turn my back on him. I had to forget anything I had learned back home about greeting with a strong handshake and direct eye contact. Instead, I learned to make a slight bow with eyes cast down. At the monastery, it was truly disrespectful to leave any amount of food on your plate. I thought about that a few years later when I went to a friend's wedding in Louisiana. This was the land of debutantes and southern belles, and the rules had changed again. Forget cleaning your plate. Every one of those ladies knew it was polite to leave something behind. They also crossed their ankles. When another friend of mine, Sochi, got married, she had a big wedding reception. It was a diverse group of guests. Her Mexican family was there. Her Anglo friends were there. It was a wonderful party. Afterwards, one of her coworkers asked her how she was getting on with her thank you notes. "What do you mean?" she asked. She had never heard of writing thank you notes for wedding presents. "You know," said the coworker, "so that your guests will know how grateful you are for their gifts." "Of course I'm grateful," said Sochi. In her culture, this was made obvious by the hospitality that she had shown her guests at the party. "What did you do?" I asked her years later when she told me this story. "I sent thank you notes to the white people," she said. If manners and etiquette are so contextual, and if our context is constantly changing at the pace of the world around us, Is anything constant at the core of how to behave? If being polite is just a way to mask the uglier truths, and we are on a quest for truth, then is there any reason we shouldn't just do away with the superficial polish? And if we are continually fighting for freedom from customs of the past that keep us from feeling free, are there any customs that should prevail? Emily Post wrote her book Etiquette in 1922, based on manners she learned growing up in the 1800s. Is any of that still relevant today? I think yes. Yes to all of it. At their best, I don't see manners as superficial or antiquated at all. I see them as deeply related to our fundamental beliefs about being in relationship. How do we want to be in relationship to one another? That song you sang, do we love one another? In today's world, it's not enough to rely on the golden rule, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. We need to upgrade to the platinum rule. Do unto others as they would have you do unto them. Because good manners do change depending on the context. And how we relate to one another should change depending on the context of how each person wants to be, longs to be treated. So I've investigated, and at the core, at the deep down spiritual core of manners, I find love. And I know love is a high bar to set. It's an almost impossible task to set out to love everyone we meet, to guide all our actions by love. But what a good goal. We say it's our goal here at the Meeting House to seek the truth in love. But we need some mileposts and road markers on the way to our goal of love. And maybe those can be good manners. P.M. Forney, the founder of the Civility Project, writes, I am optimistic about our ability to better ourselves. We can learn to be decent and caring. We can learn to give of ourselves. We can learn to love. How do we do that? The same way we learn how to speak, read, swim, or ride a bicycle. We need somebody to teach us, and we need practice. Forney must have read the Yaya Sisterhood too. He writes, the reason I like Vivi's advice is that I read it as saying that love is a point of arrival, a goal difficult to achieve. And before we think we can love, we need basic training. First things first. First, we discipline our ego to look beyond the narrow confines of its immediate needs. Then we will have a chance to understand what real love is. First, manners, then love. After the training, Forney writes, there will be those who are able to love others, even strangers, as they love themselves. And there will be those whose love will be confined to their friends and family. All, however, will have learned to practice respect, restraint, concern, and benevolence to some degree. Manners, he says, are the first steps of the soul toward love. The Emily Post website asks, what does etiquette mean to you? To us, it means treating people with consideration, respect, and honesty. It means being aware of how our actions affect those around us. Why? To help us build successful relationships. And as Emily herself explained, manners are a sensitive awareness of the feelings of others. If you have that awareness, you have good manners, no matter what fork you use. Let's not forget love. But on our way there, let's try for good manners. Amen, and blessed be.